The great hall of Blackthorn Castle had never looked so cold. Stone walls that once echoed with laughter now stood silent, wrapped in shadows that seemed to grow longer every year. At the head of the hall sat Damian Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Blackthorn Pack, a man whose name alone could silence a room. He ruled with strength, with discipline, with a will that never bent. But those who looked closely could see that something inside him had been broken for a long time, and no one dared to ask why. 3 years earlier, Damian had been a different man. He had a mate, a woman named Alira, a healer from a smaller, weaker pack that had once been at war with his own. Their bond had been instant, undeniable, the kind of connection that pack elders spoke of only in old stories. Damian had defied tradition and his own counsel to make her his Luna, believing that their love could heal the wounds between two broken packs. For a while, it worked. Alira brought warmth into the castle that had never existed before. She tended to the sick, comforted the grieving, and stood beside Damian with a quiet strength that made him feel invincible. The pack began to trust her, then to love her. Even Damian's most stubborn warriors softened in her presence. But not everyone welcomed the peace she brought. Kale, Damian's beta and closest advisor since childhood, watched Alira's rising influence with growing resentment. He had always believed that strength came from control, from keeping rivals weak and enemies close only to crush them later. Alira's gentle diplomacy threatened everything he believed the pack should stand for. Slowly, quietly, he began to plant seeds of doubt in Damian's mind. It started small. A comment here, a raised eyebrow there. Kale would mention how often Alira left the castle grounds, how she still had contact with healers from her old pack, how strange it was that peace had come so easily after years of war. Damian brushed it off at first. He trusted Alira completely, but doubt is a patient poison, and Kale was willing to wait. Then came the night that changed everything. Kale arrived at Damian's chambers late, his expression grave. He claimed he had seen Alira meeting secretly with Ronan, the alpha of a rival pack and Alira's former betrothed before the war had separated them. He said he had proof, whispered conversations overheard, a cloak matching Alira's scene slipping through the forest at midnight. Every word was carefully chosen, every detail crafted to wound Damian exactly where he was most vulnerable. Damian did not sleep that night. By morning, rage had replaced reason. He summoned Alira before the entire pack, his voice sharp enough to cut through stone. He accused her of betrayal, of secretly conspiring with Ronan, of using their bond to weaken his kingdom from within. Alira stood before him, stunned into silence, her eyes searching his face for some sign that he did not truly believe what he was saying. He did. She tried to speak, to explain that her meetings with Ronan were not what they seemed, but Damian would not listen. Wounded pride is a loud thing, and it drowned out every word she tried to say. In front of his people, he stripped her of her title as Luna, and banished her from the pack, forbidding her from ever returning to Blackthorn land. Alira had one chance to defend herself, and she chose not to take it. Not because she was guilty, but because she believed that a love which required proof to survive was already lost. If Damian could not trust her without an explanation, then no explanation would ever be enough. She left that night with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart too proud to beg. Damian told himself he had done the right thing. A king could not be made a fool of, especially not by his own mate. But as the months passed, the silence in the castle grew heavier, and the coldness in his chest never faded. He ruled, but he did not live. He ate, but he did not taste. He slept, but he never rested. The pack noticed the change in their king. Where there had once been fairness, there was now only harshness. Where there had once been warmth, there was only distance. Rumors began to spread that the banishment of the Luna had cursed the pack's fortune. Crops grew thinner. Alliances grew fragile. Damian dismissed the whispers as superstition, but even he could not deny that something essential had left the kingdom the day Alira did. Kale, meanwhile, used the chaos to strengthen his own position. With the Luna gone, there was no one left to challenge his influence over the king. He began pushing Damian toward a political marriage with the daughter of a powerful neighboring pack, insisting it was the only way to secure peace and stability. Damian, hollow and exhausted, found himself agreeing to things he no longer had the strength to fight. It was in preparation for this new arrangement that Damien ordered Alira's old chambers to be cleared out. He told himself it meant nothing, that it was simply practical. But as he stood in the doorway of the room that still smelled faintly of the herbs she used to grow on the windowsill, something in his chest tightened painfully. He dismissed the servants and cleared the room himself. It was while moving an old chest that he noticed a loose floorboard beneath the window, the wood slightly raised, as though it had been lifted many times before. Curiosity, or perhaps something deeper that he refused to name, made him kneel down and pry it open. Inside was a folded letter, yellowed slightly with time, tucked carefully, as though meant to be protected. His name was written across the front, in Alira's familiar handwriting. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. The letter was dated the night before her banishment. She had written it, planning to give it to him the next morning, but the accusation had come first, stealing away any chance she had to explain herself. In the letter, she confessed the truth about her meetings with Ronan. She had not gone to him out of love or betrayal, but out of desperation to protect Damien and his pack. She had learned, through old connections from her original pack, that a group of rogue wolves were planning a surprise attack on Blackthorn territory, one that could have devastated them if left unprepared. Ronan, despite their painful history, was the only alpha with enough influence to help her gather information and warn the border patrols in time. She had kept it secret because she did not want Damien to worry, and because part of her had hoped to protect him quietly, without needing recognition or thanks. She wrote that she loved him too much to let anything happen to his people, even if it meant risking his trust by keeping secrets from him for a little while longer. The final lines of the letter broke him completely. She wrote that if he was reading this, and she was no longer there to explain herself, then she hoped, wherever she ended up, that he would eventually learn the truth. Not so that he would come looking for her, but so that he would stop carrying guilt that was never his to bear, guilt she never wanted to place upon him. Damien sat on the floor of that empty room for a long time, the letter trembling in his hands, the weight of 3 lost years crashing down on him all at once. He did not sleep that night either, but this time, it was not rage that kept him awake, it was grief, and something far more dangerous to those who had wronged her. The next morning, Damien launched a quiet investigation, refusing to accept the story he had believed for 3 years, without finally seeking the truth. He questioned the warriors who claimed to have witnessed Alira's secret meetings, and one by one, their stories began to fall apart under real scrutiny. Some admitted they had never actually seen anything themselves, only repeated what Cale had told them to say. Others confessed they had been paid, or threatened, into supporting a story that was never true. The final piece came from a border guard who had been present the night of the alleged attack Alira had tried to prevent. He confirmed that Blackthorn patrols had indeed been warned just in time, an unexplained tip that had allowed them to intercept the rogue wolves before they crossed into pack territory. No one had ever known where that warning came from. Now, Damien did. Cale's betrayal was laid bare before the entire pack council. His manipulation, his falsified evidence, his years of quiet resentment finally exposed. He tried to defend himself, claiming he had only wanted to protect the pack from what he believed was a dangerous alliance. But the truth could not be twisted any longer. Damien, though consumed with anger, chose not to act rashly this time. He allowed the council to judge Cale according to pack law, refusing to let his own fury make the same mistake twice. But exposing the truth did not undo the years already lost. It did not erase the pain Alira had carried, or the loneliness Damien had built his entire kingdom around. There was only one thing left to do. He set out to find her. It took weeks of careful searching, following faint trails and old contacts, until he finally learned that Alira had settled in a small border town far from Blackthorn territory. She had built a quiet life there as a healer, beloved by the townspeople despite arriving with nothing and no explanation for her past. She never spoke of her time as a Luna, never mentioned the pack she once belonged to. She had simply survived, and slowly healed. Damien arrived at the edge of the town without guards, without the golden markings of his title, dressed as plainly as any traveler. He did not come as a king demanding forgiveness. He came only as a man who had failed the person who protected him most, hoping for nothing more than the chance to say so. He found her outside a small healer's cottage, kneeling beside a garden of herbs that looked remarkably similar to the ones she used to grow at the castle. When she looked up and saw him standing there, her expression did not soften immediately. 3 years of pain did not disappear at the sight of him, no matter how much his heart ached in that moment. He did not make excuses. He did not ask her to understand why he had believed the lies so easily. He simply knelt before her, the letter held gently in his hands, and told her that he had read it, that he knew the truth, that he understood now exactly what she had sacrificed, and exactly what he had thrown away in his blind anger. Illyra listened in silence, her eyes glistening but her posture unmoving. She had spent 3 years learning to live without him, learning that her worth did not depend on being believed by someone who should have trusted her without question. She was not going to abandon that strength so easily, not even for him. She told him plainly that she needed more than an apology, whispered quietly in a garden far from his kingdom. If he wanted her back, truly back, then he would need to face his people the same way he had once condemned her, publicly, honestly, without hiding behind his crown. Damien agreed without hesitation. He returned to Blackthorn with her weeks later, not as a triumphant king reclaiming his Luna, but as a man walking beside her as an equal. Before the entire pack, in the same hall where he had once stripped her of everything, he admitted his mistake completely. He spoke of Chaol's betrayal, of his own blind pride, of the letter that had shattered every belief he once held about strength and leadership. He asked for nothing from his people, except the chance to make things right, starting with restoring Illyra's title and her place beside him, not as a reward, but as a long overdue correction of a terrible wrong. The pack, who had suffered through years of a cold and joyless king, welcomed her return with a warmth that surprised even Damien. It seemed the kingdom had been waiting for its healer just as much as he had. In the months that followed, Blackthorn slowly began to heal alongside its king and Luna. New laws were established, ensuring that no accusation would ever again lead to punishment without the accused first being given the chance to speak and be truly heard. Chaol's fall from power became a lesson repeated for generations, a reminder of how easily trust could be poisoned by pride and fear. Damien never again took Illyra's loyalty for granted. Each night, he kept the old letter locked safely away, not as a painful memory, but as a reminder of how close he had come to losing everything that truly mattered, all because he had chosen anger over truth. And Illyra, though she had forgiven him, made sure he understood that love was not something to be assumed. It had to be protected, nurtured, and above all, trusted, even when doubts tried to creep in. Their bond, once nearly destroyed by a lie, grew stronger because it had finally been built on something real. The kingdom of Blackthorn thrived once more, not because of strength or fear, but because its king had finally learned the most important lesson of his life, that trust, once broken, could only be rebuilt through truth, humility, and the courage to admit when he was wrong.